Hey everybody, welcome to DBS Films Podcast. My name is Kellen. With me as always, my brother Brendan, and together we make movies with DBS Films. Today's episode, we are going to do a day-by-day breakdown of our newest feature that we just got done filming this week. We're calling it right now Into the Forest 2.0, but if you caught our last podcast, you know we are incredibly excited about it. It is by far, in our opinion, the best. It was the smoothest shoot. Whole bunch of really, really good things to say and a big confident booster for us moving forward. So we're excited. If you want to learn more, if you want to learn how you can be in these movies, because we had 20 plus people from our Discord who we met online through those channels that were casting our movies, go ahead, join it. It's DBS Films. Be sure to follow us, give us a like, and see what it is all about. So this episode, I really kind of want to go by each day. You know, it was an 8-day shoot. And really just kind of highlight, you know, what the day was, what the advantages were, what we kind of felt through it. So with that being said, I think a quick recap. Found footage movie. It was our easiest film that we've done. We think it comes a lot from the experience and the scheduling of it. It was overall super smooth. Anything you want to mention along those lines?
No, I mean, that's pretty much it.
So yeah, we're excited about it. So with that, we're gonna hop into day one, which a day one, you know, usually we've mentioned it a little bit before that we were talking about your day one, you kind of want to go ahead and just get everyone warmed up. A few scenes. We had one pop scare scene there. We had the DBS icon, which is Reggie coming back as Joe. But do you want to talk a little bit about what a first day one should be in the sense of how you should schedule that? Because I think we really kind of followed the schedule of the shapeshifter in the ideal scheduling of it. And what that means is a day one that's pretty light, pretty easy, gets people going, gets people set up, and just kind of sets you up for success.
Yeah, you want your day ones to be, easy, but you still want to push it. Like you still want to try and get as much done on that day one that you can, because anything you get done earlier is going to help you later on in the movie. My philosophy is number one, we had to pick up a lot of people. Picking up people at the airport, all these people are flying in. Very, very difficult to do. So I met one actress, Jessica, here. We took her to lunch, or we went and picked up another lead, Georgie. We took them to lunch so we can kind of bond a little bit. Then we had to go pick up Andrew, and as we were loading up all this stuff, we accidentally left the super expensive camera gear and Pelican case and everything that we really need on the side of the street, and we drove off. And it was about 8 minutes down the road when I realized we don't have the Pelican case, thank God. And I drove probably as fast as I have in my entire life to get this, because not only was it extremely expensive, but we would have been in a lot of trouble if we had left that. Thank God there's a good Samaritan who's like, hey man, is this yours? Not understanding that there's probably tens of thousands of dollars of equipment in this little box. So I started off with a mini heart attack. But that was fine. I recovered, and we picked up Andrew, who plays Bo in the movie, and we went to the location. And really, the only time crunch of this whole movie was we had Reggie for the first day, and he plays Joe. And we needed to get a daytime interview done in the span of about 2 hours. So we started shooting at 4, or we started shooting at 5. We needed him to be done by 7 because the sun set at 7. And I wanted to wrap him all in one day. His schedule was like a little bit tight. So I was like nervous. I was like, if we don't get Reggie done, and this is a pretty long like interview scene, if we don't get him done, we're kind of screwed. And then as we were driving there with all the equipment, everyone's bags in the back of the truck, it just decided to rain. And we haven't had rain in Florida since the hurricane, and it just decided to downpour. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Thank God everybody had waterproof suitcases and everything like that. But like, this is filmmaking. If there's a chance of something that's gonna, mess you up, it's gonna happen. But we got through that stuff, and I was like worried that it was gonna rain and we weren't be able to shoot Reggie's scene. But when we got to the location, we started setting up, the clouds broke, and we had probably one of the greatest sunset golden hours we've ever had. Reggie's scene turned out incredible. It had a nice glow on his face. The whole location looked really cinematic and great. We had these like wandering dogs in the background, which was a really cool backdrop. And Reggie came in and killed it. We got done in an hour and a half, and I was just doing more takes and more takes. But that was really the only time crunch scene. And the fact that we got that It was a good confidence booster right off the bat. And then we just went back to the Airbnb and started to get set up there as far as like, making sure everyone had food, making sure everyone, was comfortable and settled in because we wanted to shoot some night stuff, some basic night stuff that night, just to get people, ready to go with shooting and comfortable with each other. But I mean, that was the first day, and I thought we had a couple of scares, but like that's normal. For the most part, I think we did a good job, and it was a solid first day. I think that was probably for a day one, the most day one stuff we've ever shot.
That was interesting. I had no clue about those 2 heart attacks as I appeared a little bit later in the day. Um, that's fun to hear. So with that being said, I think the one thing with day 1, I kinda showed up once they got to the Airbnb into the house. I don't think I had anyone with me, but I had to have the full rig and the full setup for the editing and some of the supplies and stuff. So I got there right when we were doing the gang goes into the house, and then we have the scare. I think one thing that's gonna pop up here a lot is, we've kind of done these scenes before. We've done the Joe interview scene before, literally. He literally was the park ranger and Into the Forest to the original one. And I think the other big one was, the big scare that we had was the light bulb falling from the top of the frame. And this again goes back to why it's good to make so many movies because you'll pick up things that do work, you'll find things that are going to be better or one way better, another way better. And my big thing for the light bulb one is I was literally reading some of the Haunting of the Murder House reviews on Letterbox, which are like a little bit more in detail. And we've gotten for the first time people saying, there were cheap pop scares, but they worked. And that's the name of the game. I mean, you have to do that. I think another word for cheap is passive because basically what they're referring to is like, oh, it wasn't a monster, it was something like that. But hey, you have to get a pop scare in there. And I think the light bulb falling from the top of the frame is just perfect. You don't expect it, comes out of nowhere and it hits. So I feel like, while we did shoot a lot, these were all scenes that to some degree we did. And I think this is going to be a theme of it. And you want to talk real quick about how it's just so much easier, like basically it's like almost speaking another language when you have the idea of this is how the scene works, this is what it's going to work because we've done it before.
Yeah, I mean, it's twofold. Number one, you know how to do it. I know how to shoot it, but I could show the actors and be like, hey, look, guys, this is what we're trying to do here. Because I could sit down and I could try to explain to them, or I could show them clips of other movies. They're not going to get it unless they see like the movie or the clip that we actually did. But I think this is the first time where we've had enough scenes in our arsenal that worked, right? That we were able to make a full movie with all the stuff that worked. And obviously, we try different stuff. We try different scenes. There's new stuff in here. But to fall back on it is like, hey, we need a scare here. I don't know what to do. Let's go back and look at like our inventory of stuff that's worked and try and place something there. And that's exactly what we did. I think we were like recapping the murder house when we wrapped the podcast. I'm like, hey man, what do you think about doing that scare again? Because I don't know. I think we wanted him to pop out, and I've never had a pop out scare, and like we've struggled with these all the time. So it's like, all right, like instead of trying to do something and force it to work and maybe have a 50-50 shot of making it work, let's do something that we know, works and that we could pull off. And that was the light scare. And it was super easy. I think we only had like 3 of those things. But we knew what we had to do. There was like a little bit of discussion on like how to actually block it and figure out like how we're actually going to do this scene so that it makes sense. And I think we actually probably took something that was in the script that made a little bit of sense and really kind of like honed it to something that's like, all right, this we don't need to like, make it like a plot hole or try and fix it later. So, I was really happy with that. It hits, it's going to be great, but it comes from experience. And I think that's a lot of things that, indie filmmakers just don't have because they only do one movie. Is they just don't have enough experience and repertoire to go back and be like, hey, look, this is a scene in a movie I did, a couple of movies ago and it worked really well. Why don't we kind of revisit that? And it's going to be curious to see whether or not this one's better than the Murder House. And that'll be a cool little split test because we can get that feedback and then kind of take a hard look at it and be like, all right, if they like the Murder House better, why did they like the Murder House better? And we can kind of reverse engineer it. That being said, I think they're probably very similar. But it would be something that I'm interested in, like, really drilling down to the details on, like, why people really like these scenes, which is also really cool now that we have, like, on, Murder House on the YouTube channel, they have, like, little spike graphs where you can see where people are going back and rewatching the movies, so you can almost see which scares are more popular, and we could probably create, like, an Excel spreadsheet. It'd be like, "Alright, look, if we need a scare, we can go back and know these hit, know these are popular, so, why not do them again?"
Yeah, no, completely agree. I think I'll put my money on the murder house, and the reason for it is it's held to the ceiling fan. So it looks more natural, whereas we kinda just yeet a little glass out of the corner. But again, you know what the main part of that scare is? Glass is spooky. It's a great noise. Joe pops out, get a little great dialogue scene from him. So I mean, it's perfect. So again, smooth first day. Everything went like to a wrap there. It was good to go. I think we were in and out. I think we got back at like midnight or 1, which is like incredibly early for a film set. Like again, late is like the sun's coming up. Just because again, we're shooting horror, so we shoot at night. So that moves into again a schedule that we followed with the shapeshifter, which is shooting the intro scene the second day. And the intro scene's typically unique because usually it is different characters, just because you want to, usually have those characters die because it's a horror movie. So, we did the same thing for the shapeshifter, and we did the same thing for the for Into the Force 2.0. Do you want to talk about how important the intro is? Usually we say you need to have a really, really good intro. It is super critical because you need people to watch your movie, and then you need a really good climax because that's kind of the last taste of the movie people have, and that's going to really affect your scores. But do you want to talk about the intro, why it's important, why it deserves this entire day, why it's a huge focus, and so on?
Yeah, no, it's the most important part of your movie, especially if you're gonna make your money on AVOD. The movies that do really well for us are the ones that have really engaging, intros. And you saw in Girl Camera 13, saw that Murder House, Shapeshifter's like a concern because I don't think the intro is where it needs to be. But this one, we knew it needed to have a really good intro. I was not going to mess up 2 intros in a row. I gave it its first day, and I just got a ton of footage with Jessica and Lizzie, and they were absolutely phenomenal. Like, I knew from doing pre-production with them, they were taking their roles, they were taking their characters, and really, improvising with the lines. We changed a lot of dialogue. Shout out to Jessica for adding the little cell phone scene, which turned out really, really, really cool. Thought that was like a cool little dialogue scene. And I was really, really impressed with Lizzie's ability to ad lib and create her own dialogue. This is something that, seasoned actors really struggle with. And Lizzie was just going. And I was like, wow, this, and usually, like, the people who struggle with improv will stay like really weird stuff or stuff that doesn't sound natural. And I was like, man, Lizzie's taking my dialogue and just making it a million times better. So I was like, to come from somebody who's this young, was absolutely incredible. And she just kept going with it. And it was like watching Jessica and Lizzie play off each other was like the perfect dynamic you want as a director, because they both understood what we were trying to do with the characters, and they were adding their own element to it. And anytime actors can do that, it comes off as natural dialogue. Um, then we got in the tents, and I can't fit in a tent, so we cut the hole in the tent, and that was like a little bit of improv. We kind of figured out, problem solving. And once we had that, I think we have enough footage here to, really create a really cool intro. I thought Lizzie really nailed the panicness. I sent her the Sixth Sense clip with that guy. Was it Haley Joel Osment or whatever his name is, multiple times, and she nailed that tone. That was exactly what it wants. But she also made it her own. Her breathing was great. She was panicked. It sounded really good. And we just had so many pop scares. Like, we were just hit of Jessica comes in the tent and out of the tent and gets grabbed. And, we have these shadows in there. And it's just nonstop, which is what you want. We want that slow build, slow build, slow bid pop, and it's absolutely everything I wanted. I'm super excited to edit this, but I mean, I tip my hat to, Jessica and Lizzie for the job that they did. It was just so incredible to see them work together. They were super easy to work with. There wasn't a time that we were off page at all. They knew exactly what needed to be done, and they got it done. Um, and that intro took all night, but the quality that we have, the amount of takes, the amount of footage that we have, I have no doubt in my mind that we can make something really, really good with this. It's just the fact it's just like a matter of cutting it together. But I mean, like to see, these two actors come from the Discord and their performances are right up there with some of the best we've had in, DBS history. It's just absolutely incredible. And I'm super grateful for the amount of time that they, did in pre-production. So if you're an actor out there or if you're an actor in our Discord, like you have to put in the work in pre-production because once you're on set, you just don't have time to do that. But I'll tell you what, the work they did in pre-production, in practice, showed up immediately in these results. Both of them did a fantastic job. And the intro, I could not, they took an intro that I thought was good and made it probably, I mean, I could place bets that this might be our best intro ever.
Yeah, no, I really, again, huge shout out to Lizzie, huge shout out to Jessica. They did such a fantastic job. Having a, younger child in a movie it's a great production value add in my opinion, because the hard part is you usually don't find too many good child actors and one that are available or whatnot. So this was Lizzie's first role in a film and she absolutely crushed it. Amazing horror screams, really added on to the pop scare. So very excited for it. Again, it's really something that's great to see because they were passionate about it. They did what they needed to do. They were excited for it. And it just kind of shows you the benefit of having such an amazing community with the Discord. So, right now we're rolling. I knew the intro scene was good, but hey, you're not going to really feel too much, confidence then. You're just getting going. So, next day, we're kind of easing more into it. During the day, we had a lot of the Nelson heavy stuff. Welcome to Nelson. I think this is when we really start seeing, Jim's performance shine through. Cause again, this was his first one. Jim came in that following night. We kind of got him settled during the intro. And then his first time of acting. So, this was really our first day of seeing it. And then we also had Reynolds and Meredith. So we did have two actors that were there for only one day. But this again was, a very smooth shoot. I wasn't there really for the day elements of things, but I picked back up again at night. And when I was reviewing the footage, I mean, this I think, I know when you as soon as like I saw you back at the house, you're like, you got to see this clip. One, because it was pretty unique what happened, but two, you really start getting the inkling of, okay, we got some special acting going on here.
Yeah, I think this is the first time I realized we had something, after the intro, I was like, we have something special here, but the intro is one scene, right? And that wasn't the lead. So I still hadn't really seen the leads like push it. We go out there, super excited for this scene because this is Nelson. This is a very difficult scene to act. And I really want to make sure the downbeats, the interview scenes, the dialogue was very engaging. The way they deliver it was very engaging. So very high emotional stuff. Give them like a lot of grief and just a very emotional scenes. So I was pumped to film this. So we got out there early and we forgot the cords for the camera. So we had to go back, or I had to go back, drive an hour. Because also my cell phone didn't work out there. Shout out to T-Mobile. I had to bring Alexa with me because she has Verizon, which seems to work very fine. And she navigated me back, but 30 minutes, 30 minutes there, 30 minutes back, and 30 minutes again. We were down an hour and a half. But we go right into the Nelson scene, which is a heavy interview scene where he's talking about, when his daughter was taken from him. And I'd never seen Jim act. I worked with him in pre-production, but pre-production is like light. We're talking about like character motivations. When we're running lines, it's like, I'm looking for stuff that just sounds weird. They don't really amp it up. And Jim did the first take he did, I said, oh man, like this movie is going to be good. Like he just took it to another level that I knew he could probably do it, but just to see it and experience it, I feel like you could feel the air get sucked out of that room. All the other actors were like, holy shit, this is some real stuff going on here. And I think that kind of inspired everybody. Georgie and the Bo character also stepped up their game in this scene. They had a very powerful scene in the kitchen. Then we moved to like a little conspiracy scene with an Easter egg of myself and Kel's pictures on the missing children board. But that was when I was like, all right, look, here we go. Like we have the talent to pull something off that's really, really cool here. Now it's just can we execute through the rest of it? So we finished that. Then we go back home and, we have Brent, which is local legend DBS. And this is like almost like a back to back combo because Brent's a great actor, right? And I had worked with him extensively in pre production. And I had always said, I want this scene to be like Matthew McConaughey in True Detective, right? If you've seen the first season, he's there and he's like playing with like a ripped can of Coke and he's just like recollecting his career, what happened on that one day. And it's almost like a 7-minute monologue with him, and he does such a great job. I knew Brent could do it. Like, I didn't doubt him for a second. And he just gave the performance of a lifetime, man. I was watching this. He did the first take, and I was just like, where did this come from? Because he nailed it. It was such an incredible moment that I got super excited because I'm like, oh man, we got Nelson who did a great job. And we got Brent who's just, just explaining the lore from the police detective side. And he gave this gut wrenching story about how these woods essentially broke him. And I'm just like, oh man, the only thing was like the location that we shot him in was like a little bit off, but I think we could fix that by like zooming in a little bit. It wasn't ideal, but because we didn't have like a location for Brent's character. But my God, he carries this scene, and it's just 4.5 minutes, and he didn't mess up once, man. It was such a crazy thing to see. And I'm so proud of Brian. He did such a great job to go from a guy that literally just lifts his mask up and Girl in Cabin 13 to this scene, which, if it was a short by itself, would probably win a lot of awards. It was just absolutely incredible. So to see, back to back great scenes in there, which is absolutely amazing. Then we go out and we, play with, we shoot with Meredith, who lost her child. And she was an equally important scene because you're seeing the grief from the parent side. And she just went out there and killed it. Like, her emotions were so good. And the way we blocked it, the way we had everyone come out there, the way we finished the scene, like zooming in, slow panning on the stuffed animal, just was absolutely incredible. She did such a great job. And I remember driving home from this scene after we accidentally drove on a closed highway and almost fell off of a closed highway. Shout out to Haines City for not, putting up construction barriers. Once we got back, I was just, over the moon. I was like, the casting on this, the energy, for the first time, everything felt really different. And I can't really explain it, but it just felt like, I can't explain it. It just felt different than what we've had before. Everything was working so well. And, the acting was great. The chemistry was great. Everything was good. The story was great. It just felt, it felt really, really good. But then I started to get anxiety because I was like, all right, look, we're 3 or 4 days, we're 3 days into this. Or I think we're actually 2 days into it. We have to execute. Like, we have to get this done because we have all the pieces in place. We have good story, we have good actors, we have good pacing. It's on me to get this thing, over the finish line. So I remember I was excited and I got really nervous. But that was it day 2?
Yeah, so that was day 3, when we had Nelson. So we basically have Nelson doing the downbeats because the downbeats are so engaging. They're not even really like downbeats. They're just like aggressive, deep plot of sadness that's going on in these woods. So they really do push it forward. And even then, like, each of the downbeats, like, Nelson opens the door with a shotgun and whatnot. And really, you have Nelson's story, you have Reynolds' story, who's basically warning about Nelson. So you're already kind of delivering the back and forth so you can see both of them. And then, at night, what we ended up filming is we had Meredith out there, and that was the crying scare, the pop scare lunge. And talk about a great way to introduce Brent's character, what he's helping there and how he's doing it. So I think it was really, really smooth, but that was a lot of the heavy lifting of the story was that day. And I think that's a good way because, again, the way we're doing it is we have the intro. Now this second day is a lot of downbeats, which are giving the actors a lot of time to flush out their characters, because the next day is when we turn up the heat and we have essentially the Blood Brothers setting up montage, just all of the major scenes. So I think it was a great way to ease them in. But, yeah, like you were saying, And I remember getting back that night and, you're like, take a look at this, like scenes, take a look at these footage. Like, we're getting some really good stuff. So, I think when it comes to schedule wise, it's also strategic doing it like this because you're giving the actors a lot of depth into their character. I think the Nelson monologue in the beginning is super important for Nelson as a character versus if you just went right into, kind of the ritual, he might not have that backstory because you really feel for the guy in that story. So I think it was great overall. Do you want to talk about just kind of the pop scares at night with Meredith? Because again, we're stacking them on there. They did a great job. It introduces Reynolds. It's just this movie flows so fast.
Yeah, and I had told her, and we did a lot of pre-production. I said, your character is extremely important because you're telling the same story, which is crucial because we want to make sure the story is very clear. These kids are going in the woods, they're being taken, they're never found, and they think a witch is taking them. And the way that I think this movie is different is we're telling different perspectives of the same story. So, Into the Woods, the first one, we told different variations of the same story. This one, we're telling different perspectives of the same story. And the first one, I think, confused people. This one, I think, is going to add clarity because you have, Officer Reynolds, who was a police officer. He worked on these cases. They couldn't find the children. And you can see the pain it caused him. You had Reggie, who worked in these woods. He was a forest ranger. You could see the pain that this situation caused him. Then you had Nelson, who, lost a child in the woods, but it was about a year back. So, but you can see the pain and the grieving that caused him. And then you have Meredith, who lost a child, but it was recent. So she's more frantic, hysterical, and you could really feel and see her pain for losing a child. And she's just uncontrollably sobbing. She's attacking one of the leads because she thinks she took her daughter. And then you see her kind of melt to the ground because she realizes, like, her first emotions were to Georgie that she thought Georgie, had taken her child. Because why are there people out there in the woods? And then when she realizes that Georgie is a young female that probably would not fit the description of a child kidnapper, she slowly starts to melt to the ground in despair, while holding like a stuffed animal. And then we get Reynolds to come in, and that's his character introduction. So we took kind of like the smooth transitions that we had in Murder House and Shapeshifter and applied them to this. Everything has a reason. When I'm writing and we're shooting one scene, it's to bring you into the next scene. So now you're introduced to Reynolds. When Reynolds says goodbye, a plot device comes up that brings you back to Reynolds, but you already know who he is because you brought him up before. So I think it's important in there. Pop scares are always very difficult for actors to pull off because they don't study them like I do. They don't study them like we do. But Meredith came in there, understood blocking, understood direction, understood how to hide behind a tree and then pop out real aggressively. And I think it's going to work really, really well. So I'm super happy. At the end of this day, everyone did such a great job. And this is working with a lot of actors in one day. It's not just a couple. We had the leads, we had Brent, we had Meredith, we had all these people on here. That's a lot of people to work with on an indie set when we only really have a PA. And like, shout out to Dylan, who did an absolutely phenomenal job. I think one of the reasons the shoot went so smooth was because he did such a great job. But I mean, that's it. We don't have people to really work with these actors to make sure they're, at the places they're supposed to be. So to bring in all these actors was, a little bit nerve wracking, but I mean, they were just great. They were absolutely phenomenal. And I think it really adds a lot of dynamics to this movie.
Yeah, I really do. I mean, I think that allows a lot of it to be condensed and a lot of it to be improved just because of, the abilities that we have to at least try and capture that with a limited team, when you're able to get the message through and you're able to work with them on the pop scares. And she did an absolutely amazing job. But like you said, it's day 3. I would say, morale is super high, but realistically, I think the next day is our biggest one. And at this point, we had pushed Welcome to Rudwick back, and I think that's it. So I think that was the only one that we pushed back just slightly. And again, that's a quick little intro one that we had. So we're making good. Usually at this point in time, we're kind of pushing things back already. So we go ahead, hop into the next day. This is Thursday, I believe. Let me see. Yep. So this is Thursday. So this is the big day for us. We have basically they're going to go camping. So they're out camping during the day, but then the big thing is at night. Nelson finds a spot. I mean, the whole key element to this movie that takes it from, I wouldn't say zero because we're already going pretty good, but like from 45 miles an hour to 4,000 is the ritual, which is basically Nelson setting up a ritual with Alexa and Andrew to basically go ahead and summon the witch into the plains to make an offering. So really this was the big scene. This involved a lot of tiki torches for us to basically have pyrotechnics. So then you kind of have a backdrop, which again came out amazing. But before we hop into that, do you want to talk about the day stuff first and just kind of camping? We did have a really, really good location, which was super convenient to film on because basically we had a little bit of a home base on there, even though it was away from the main base. It was an area we could stay on. And I mean, the woods, you point in one direction, it looks like they went on forever.
You did a lot of hiking stuff, and I'm not sure whether or not this is the scene with the witch ornaments, but I do want
It
to
is.
do it.
Yep.
Yeah, so I want to do a massive shout out to Ashley in the
Hmm.
Discord. Um, Not only did she act as like a script supervisor because she's a resident found footage horror expert, I was sending her this script early in development, and she was giving me a lot of feedback on it, and a lot of her changes were in this script, which is to have somebody who watches all these found footage movies and can be like, hey, my following, the people I know like found footage, they like this, don't do this. And one of the things that I brought up is I wanted to have witch ornaments, and I was going to shape them similar to like the Blair Witch. And she said, no, the found footage people are going to be upset about that. Let me make these ornaments for you. And I'm like, really? And she's like, yes, I will do it. So I'm like, all right. And because we would have never had anything as good as she did. And they came in a box and they were all pretty much intact. And I'll tell you what, the witch ornament scene, and I sent it to her, I think yesterday, was absolutely incredible. And it looks so good. And like Bo goes up and touches it and it spins around. It just adds to the creepiness factor. So I'm forever grateful for the effort that she put in there. She didn't need to do any of this stuff. She didn't need to look at the scripts. She didn't need to give me feedback. She didn't need to make these witch ornaments. And the fact that she did it was just absolutely incredible. And I really appreciate that. This is a small little scene, but adding the production value made this movie so much better. And you'll hear me talk about it a lot of times. The difference between a good movie and a great movie is just small little details. Well, Ashley, this is your little detail that you helped me with really made this a great movie. So I'm forever grateful for that. I just wanted to bring that up before I forgot because it was just such an impactful thing to this movie.
I was gonna bring that up because again, huge shout out to Ashley for multiple times. I was consulting with her, sending her clips because yeah, this is we make movies for our fans with our fans. And if Ashley gives us the seal of approval on our found footage movie, it's a damn good found footage movie. So yeah, we had the hiking scenes there, again, pretty straightforward with it. And it's something we did before with Into the Forest. So we kind of got the gist of it, doing montage, getting location. The location helps out a ton. And then, this was the big one, setting up for the night scene. So the night scene basically involves a series of torches that were lit. I will say I've probably made the knowledge that tiki torches aren't the ideal one for it. Probably want just like a metal post or something, because basically the pyrotechnics comes down to just this kerosene rag mix, so it'll burn for a while. But the problem was the torches would fall over after a few takes. That being said, it looks absolutely amazing. But these were big scenes, heavy emotion. It's found footage. Not only is there pressure on the actors, but there's pressure on you because you screw up a shot or something like that. Well, there's it goes. We're back to the beginning. So, do you want to talk about before we get into how it went, just the pressure of kind of the setup and just this is the critical moment, and these are the ones that yes, we can film it again, but filming again requires a lot. And we did pick up one scene, but you screw up here for one reason or the other, it's really going to set the production back. So today was really kind of the you got to show up day.
Yeah, this movie is so deep and emotional, especially for Jim. And one of the reasons I casted him is because he, was confident in his ability to just pull up a lot of negative emotions and, deliver this scene. And that's great because that's natural acting, it's improv. He's just kind of going out there and just really like, hitting the beats that I want to hit, but how he's getting there is just coming from a very dark place. It's what I wanted. The problem is you only have 3 to 4 of these in you. You just can't capture that magic for more of them because the more you do it, the more you get desensitized to it, and the takes are just going to become a little more flat. And man, I was so nervous. I was like, man, you better be able to hit record here. You better be able to make sure this is in focus. You better not fall into the fire. Like it was pretty ridiculous. And I got really nervous after we did the Blood Brothers thing because that was supposed to be a little downbeat. And as I mentioned in the last podcast, it turned out to be so incredible because it's me moving around all these people, cutting their fingers. There's tension, there's aggressiveness, there's apprehension, and it's perfect. And I was like, oh man, if this little downbeat scene is so good, the scene after this, which I'm not going to spoil, but it's extremely intense. I was like, man, like I'm so nervous that I'm going to mess up one of these shots and, we're going to lose a take here because he could have only done this, I think, like 4 times. I think that's what he did. And we're lucky to capture pretty much all 4 of them. Um, but that was the scene that I'm talking about. And you'll see when it comes out. I did the first one and I'm like, oh man, this movie's gonna mess some people up because I felt it. And I think everybody felt it. You could feel the wind get sucked out of that set. I don't think anybody said anything for 5 minutes. Like it was just ridiculous. I've never really felt that before. And I was like, oh geez, what did I create with what did I create with this
Monster.
one? But you know, we wanted to do something dark and gritty, and that's what we did. But yeah, you could feel the air get sucked out of the set when the scene occurred. And as an actor for Jim, for that to happen is probably like, what needs to happen. That if people weren't like completely engrossed in this performance and it when it's punching you in the stomach and you know exactly what's going to happen, that's another level. I think that's just it.
Yeah, it really like I can't agree with that statement more. I mean, man, and I said this from the very beginning in the sense of I was like, bro, what did you write here? You monster. And I was like, I get it, and we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, it's pretty heavy, and it's a very heavy scene. And speaking of which, we did have another huge shout out to Tatum for doing the special effects for this stuff, and she did an absolutely fantastic job with it. And then also Isabella, who came out and played our witch, both from the Discord. And again, it was great. They were on set. They were super cool to deal with in the sense that it's always good when you bring positive vibes onto the set and everything there, especially when you just saw what you just made there. So I think that was a good point and kind of getting to that point there, but it was heavy. We did push back. I'm trying to remember which one. It was some of the items we pushed back to the next day that involved Nelson and Jim to a little bit. It was Bo getting it. Poor Bo. So yeah, we basically, I mean, we called it, and it wasn't more so for the tired, it's more so for just the emotional drain, which again, it makes sense to some degree because it really is one of those things where like the performances were very good that we were able to get from them, and it was incredibly heavy stuff that we did through that whole take there. So we did make a little shift, but it wasn't too bad there. But I mean, we say this before, but the torches is a great hack. I mean, that whole scene just looks absolutely amazing and beautiful. You can feel the intensity of it. There was one scene here that we did a slight adjustment to, that we made a pickup. It was one of the only pickups that we did, just because we thought we could do it in a different way to kind of have a bit more of an oomph and an emphasis that the witch was there. But like other than that, I mean, this was it. And I think after we got this scene, what was kind of going through your head as we were wrapping on this day? Because to me, it was like, well, shit, we got a good movie.
Yeah, I mean, after seeing that performance, I was like, I just got even more excited because that's a very difficult sequence to pull off. Not only acting wise, but directing and then cinematography. And I'd like to give a shout out to Jim because, I always preach like communication. If something is bothering you or something's up, like talk to me. Like I'm here for you. I'm here to make this, we're a team. And I'm still really trying to figure out how to like get actors more comfortable with me. They're very shy and they don't say things. And I don't know if that's just lack of experience or if it's just, they're used to whatever the director says, like is the way that you have to do it, which is a horrible philosophy. But really, for the first time, Jim came up and he pulled me aside and said, "Hey, look, like we have this other half of this crazy sequence. Um, I just gave a lot of emotion in the last one. I don't think I can give you the performance you want for the second half." He's like, "I feel really bad. I'm just letting you know." I said, "Dude, not a problem. One of the reasons why we scheduled it like it is I could move things around." I was like, "Not a problem for me to move that to the next day," where he very easily could have just hid that from me and kind of, I don't think he would have phoned it home, but I don't think he would have got the performance that we captured. So the fact that he came to me, he was upfront, um, and allowed me the option to change it and move it around, which we had plenty of time to do, really kind of made me happy because I was like, all right, maybe for the first time we're getting a better level of communication between myself and the actors. But Jim's also kind of experienced. He knows what his he knows what he can and he cannot do. But for him to just come and say that, it made me happy. I was like happy about that. I was like, look, not a problem. We can move it. And I think that that performance, is so much better than if he would have tried to do it that night.
Yeah, I mean, again, and it is something where, there's a balance to this because if we were, in some of our earlier sets where it's like we're up against a huge time crunch, that could literally be an option we don't have. And I think it was something because we set ourselves up with the schedule and everything there. We really got to a point where we were able to, allow that to happen. And like you said, I think it was a great call. I think it really improved everything. It really kind of made everything click a lot more. And I'm excited for it. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up here. We're going to get the next few days of the shoot on our next episode of the podcast. But before we end, I just remember this was the point because I finally got some footage. I'd put the intro together a little bit and I just kind of had watched some stuff and this was when I was like, okay, we really have something special moving here. And to give you guys an idea, we basically had one more big day of filming, one more really big day of filming. And it's kind of putting in the final building blocks, the final little outdoor night scenes and whatnot. But do you just want to talk about how this schedule, it's really relieving where you can kind of, because I know there was like a mentality that we had on set, and I would say, shout out to Bush Light for this one, because we basically every single night at the end of the day, I don't know who got those, but we basically just shared a beer at the end of the day. And I think it was something where because we were on schedule with the shoot, it makes everything so much better. And I just kind of want to, make this note for filmmakers, specifically first time filmmakers. You're not going to have as many time as you think it is. I think every single time we hear an indie film being made, what do we hear? Pickup days. And we usually hear like 2 to 3 pickup days. And I think the big thing we can recommend is give yourself extra days, film your big stuff in the middle of the days, and go from there. But I think it's such a huge thing that we see. And I think that's the biggest issue for just a lot of problems. I think that's what causes tension on set. That's what causes issues. That's what causes all of these things that degrade. And the opposite thing, which is what we encountered here, is when you wrap and you do these scenes and you execute on them, you have very high team morale and team, a group setting. Because I think just with the fact that we weren't pushing so hard to catch up for time or anything like that, it made the experience better for everyone, which allowed them to focus on their performance a lot. So, do you want to talk about how important scheduling is because it can cause such a negative impact on a lot of things?
I mean, I think for indie filmmakers, 90% of their problems could be fixed by just scheduling properly. It's a dual-edged sword though, because you just don't know how long it takes. One of the reasons we run with a small crew is because I'm really the person to figure out how long things take. Like I'm communicating with myself. If we had an AD, if we had PAs, if we had lighting guys, It's almost like that thing where you like talking to a phone and then you tell that person what you said and it kind of goes down the line. It gets more jumbled. Well, to get a large crew up, it's like, hey man, call time's 5 minutes, and then that guy's late by a minute. Then the next guy's late by a minute. Then late guy's late by a minute. All of a sudden, you're down 45 minutes. Is very difficult. So I think that indie sets, especially if you're new, trying to like manage 30 people is just stupid. I don't think you're gonna have the skills to do it. And we had a lot of actors on this set. I mean, this was not a small shoot by any means. Might have been. I actually think this is our largest shoot we've ever done. I think this is the most actors we've ever worked with, the largest shoot, which is weird because when I first wrote it, I was like, all right, this is a nice, easy project. We'll have 4 people. This is by far our largest shoot. So we need to be, on point with scheduling. We need to be on point with everything. But it comes from experience. Like you just don't know how long things are going to take until you do them. And this one we got done with a lot of stuff quicker. And I think that's just the found footage element. We didn't have to do as many takes. And the actors were phenomenal. They were able to nail all of their stuff immediately in one take. They knew what they were going to say and they got it done, which is a shout out to them. And I think this was just everything kind of clicked on this one. Is the best way I could say is like everything was it just worked. I don't know if this is luck. I'm really hoping we just didn't get lucky. But you know what? Making 12 of these, maybe we're due for a little bit of luck. Maybe our karma tank is like filling up now and we're close to just getting all things just kind of measure up and work out for us for once. But I'm hoping that this is the gold standard moving forward, because I absolutely enjoyed this shoot. I am not stressed right now. I'm physically tired, but mentally I am ready to go and make another one.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. It was smooth, it was easy. I think a lot of it comes from it is a found footage element. So if you do get through the hard part, which is the filming, you're setting yourself up for a huge success. So overall, it was great. And yeah, I mean, while it was the most amount of people we've had on set because of the different roles and everything there, the vast majority of them were from the Discord, which means that they're, all about it. They show up, they're ready to go, they know their lines, and I think that just allowed so much more for it. So we're gonna go ahead and wrap up here. This is day 4 of 8 days. We're gonna give you the final days in our next episode. But until then, have a good one.